This morning, I'm invited to share my thoughts with you on the auspicious occasion of Teachers' Day, and my grateful thanks to you. But such a lofty introduction was given about me that I was reminded basically of the fact that I may be a law teacher, but I'm also a lawyer. And lawyers have a notorious reputation. The notoriety arising from the fact that when the case is weak, they give a long introduction. And if the case is strong, they just get up and say, "My lord, the facts speak for themselves." Maybe the master of ceremony as well as the Vice Chancellor thought today's case is not that formidable, therefore let us play it safe by giving a long introduction about the speaker. Therefore, my first appeal to you is don't have high expectations, because where you have a revolution of rising expectations, you will have greater disappointments. Okay, thank you very much for introducing me on such lofty scale. And with these few words of introduction, let me initiate my interaction with my colleagues, whom I call fellow students, because I recall the words of Nani Palkhiwala when he was asked to address students after he had argued in Keswanand Bharati's case at the ripe old age of 75 plus. In the immediate presence of Supreme Court judges, he addressed students as fellow students. Then immediately one of the Supreme Court judges asked, "Nani, you argued so brilliantly, but today you are addressing students as fellow students." Then you know what Nani said? "Sir, a young person, when he is on the rolls of a college, he will be a formal student. But when he walks from the university to universe, he will become a real student throughout his life, because learning is a process which starts in the womb of our respective mothers and which must travel beyond our tomb," he said. Therefore, I have the temerity to address you as fellow students. One wonderful thing about teachers is, like judges, teachers never retire and they rarely die, because they influence eternity and nobody knows where the influence stops. And today we are observing Teachers' Day to mark the birthday of an extraordinary person who had roots in the state of Karnataka, erstwhile Mysore, as it was called. And Professor Y.S.R. Murthy was referring to the fact that he was the Vice Chancellor of Andhra University, where I served. I would further embellish it by saying that it was my privilege to have occupied the same room where Dr. Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan stayed for 5 years. And when I was appointed as an assistant professor or lecturer, that room was unoccupied. Nobody wanted that because it was in a corner. And when my professor asked me to occupy the room, I said, "Sir," without knowing that it was a room that was occupied by a great person like Dr. Radhakrishnan. But when Radhakrishnan's birth centenary celebrations were being observed, one afternoon when I was working in my room, a team from Doordarshan came. They knocked on my door with all the cameras. And they said, "Sir, we need your permission." I said, "What is the permission you need? We are shooting a film for Doordarshan to commemorate the birth centenary celebrations of Dr. Radhakrishnan. And this was the room in which Dr. Radhakrishnan was staying." And I was just wonderstruck. And that day itself, I went to my Herald department and said, "Sir, even in the course of my career where progression would be taking place, even though I would be entitled to much bigger mundane rooms, I would continue to stay in this room till I breathe my last in Andhra University." From 1978 to 2014, the same small room was occupied by me, because I thought at least if I get 1 millionth of the extraordinary learning of Dr. Radhakrishnan, I'll be doing justice. So that is an extraordinary honor I had in my life. And when Professor VSLLS was introducing Dr. Radhakrishnan as the Vice Chancellor of Andhra University, I was reminded of that privilege. Two incidents I will tell you in the life of Dr. Radhakrishnan, which will motivate us, which will inspire us. When he was leaving Mysore to take up fresh assignment, and he has served in Bangalore, he has served in Madras, then Visakhapatnam before moving to Delhi. Students requested him only one thing. Sir, when you are going in a horse buggy, we will remove the horses. Please allow us to be the horses. And from all the way to the campus to the railway station, it was students who carried Dr. Radhakrishnan on their shoulders. That was the tributes that were paid to that extraordinary man. And two other incidents in his life. One was when he went as ambassador to Russia, Soviet Union. You know who was the head there in Soviet Union? Stalin. A man mortally feared. People were afraid to go anywhere near him. And when as the ambassador of India to that great nation, when he was required to present his credentials, he presented his credentials to Stalin, and affectionately Dr. Radhakrishnan put his arm around the waist of Stalin. Stalin was surprised and said, "Sir, you are the first one who has treated me as a human being. In my life, I never come across persons, coming so close to me. They are mortally afraid of me. But you have instilled the middle stick in my heart. You will be my teacher." And Radhakrishnan, during his entire sojourn in Moscow, he used to have philosophical discourses with Stalin. That is one experience. The second experience is more extraordinary. When he became the Vice President of India, naturally, he will be the ex officio chairman or chairperson of Rajya Sabha. He was conducting the Rajya Sabha proceedings, and we had stalwarts in opposition then. One of the stalwarts was Bhupesh Gupta. And the opposition wanted to stall the moves of the treasury benches by making their members speak continuously and indulge in a phenomena called filibustering. That's a technique that will be adopted by members of the legislature. They will go on speaking, relevant or irrelevant. And Bhupesh Gupta was assigned the task by all the opposition members just to embarrass the treasury. And Bhupesh Gupta started speaking. After listening to him for 15 minutes, Dr. Radhakrishnan said, "Bhupesh, you please stop." And Bhupesh Gupta did not raise even a whiff of protest. He stopped it. And when the Rajya Sabha was adjourned for the day, the members of the opposition said, "We have given you the task of filibustering and you stopped suddenly." You know what Bhupesh Gupta said? "What can I do, sir? Radhakrishnan sir was my teacher. And when my teacher asked me to shut up, I have no business to continue." He has such a great moral force. And that is the extraordinary individual that Radhakrishnan was. And as a mark of respect to him, we are observing Teachers' Day. But before that, before I speak to you about Radhakrishnan's views on education and then the role of teachers, let me first pay my homage to the first teacher in our lives, who is our respected and respective mother. Remember, that is the best way of celebrating the Teachers' Day. Because as Mahatma Gandhi said, "I have learned the first lessons of my life from my unlettered mother." Mark the use of the word. He simply said his mother was unlettered but not uneducated. Because Mahatma Gandhi said no mother would be uneducated. And in one context, C.K. Prahalad, the management expert, was telling that every housewife in India has such extraordinary management skills that she would be far superior to the best graduates coming out of IIM Ahmedabad. Look at the way they manage all the 24 hours. And Mahatma Gandhi said, "I learned the first lessons of my life from my unlettered mother." And maybe that's the reason why Rabindranath Tagore said, God created mother, maybe because he cannot be present everywhere. Therefore, perhaps the first pledge that you, the youngsters, should take on this occasion is that we will never let down three mothers. Very important, remember. Biological mother who gave birth to you, then the alma mater, your army group of institutions. If your mother has given birth to you, your alma mater has enabled you to stand on your feet and has given you status. Never let down your alma mater. The third mother is Mother India. Jawaharlal Nehru long ago said, who cares whether you live or die if India dies? Who dies if India lives, and who lives if India dies? Therefore, three mothers in your lives: biological mother, alma mater, and Mother India. And after paying homage to a mother, I will start with the wonderful observation of Dr. Radhakrishnan on education. And he said, education is aspiring knowledge beyond what is academic and professional. What a wonderful way of expression. Education is aspiring knowledge beyond what is academic and professional. That reminds me of one of the shortest definitions of education I have seen. Education is not information, but formation. Poet T.S. Eliot long ago said, where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? That means in 21st century, perhaps education has become information, but no. Education is not information. Education is formation. Formation of what? Formation of a complete human being. In fact, as Swami Vivekananda said, that which bridges the distance between a human being and being human is education. When Swamiji was once asked a question, Swamiji, you interact with God daily. We are not that privileged. Can you tell us how Goddess looks like? You know what Swamiji said? Is there God? No, there is no God. But I can tell you, perfect human being is God, and imperfect God is human being. Perfect human being is God, and imperfect God is human being. And education is that removes those imperfections. That means perfection is there inside us, and education removes those imperfections. And then he said, we are all human beings, but how many of us are being human? And that which bridges the distance between a human being and being human is education. Therefore, education is a formation of a complete human being. And that's what Dr. Radhakrishnan said when he said, education is aspiring knowledge beyond what is academic and professional. Why I'm telling you this is, Professor VSL Murthy said, I have experience of 42 years. Excellent. Oscar Wilde long ago said, experience is the name one gives to one's mistakes. Okay. Now, it's true, good judgment comes out of experience. But experience comes out of bad judgment. Please remember. And when you say I have 42 years of experience, it means I had 42 years of experience of committing mistakes and, remember, involving myself in bad judgments. And as a teacher, in the formative years, I also used to, like most of the youngsters, complain that it is becoming very difficult for me to complete syllabus in time and to complete syllabus on time. And therefore, with all the administrative responsibilities and other co-curricular and extracurricular responsibilities that my Vice Chancellor, my colleagues are giving, I'm finding it difficult to cope with the expectations. Therefore, I'm not able to complete the syllabus. But in the latter half of my career, I found that it was one of the silliest mistakes I've committed. Because the job of a teacher is not to cover the syllabus, but to uncover the syllabus. Please remember. And when I use this expression, uncover the syllabus, the job of a teacher is to remove the cover of darkness, from darkness to light, to remove the cover of ignorance, from ignorance to knowledge, to remove the cover of transience, from here to eternity. The Bible says, quo vadis, where do you go? So the job of a teacher is to make the young mind travel from ignorance to knowledge, darkness to light, and here to eternity. Therefore, the job of a teacher is not to cover the syllabus, is to uncover the syllabus. Because covering the syllabus is a mundane exercise. If you ask me to cover Mahabharata, I can cover the syllabus in 2 minutes, saying that the evil forces were vanquished by virtuous forces because Dharma was on their side. And the evil forces were represented by Kauravas, virtuous forces were represented by Pandavas, and the incarnation of Dharma, Lord Krishna, was on their side. But to understand one stanza of Mahabharata, even Lord Ganesh used to take time to understand what Vyasa was dictating to him. And therefore, uncovering the syllabus, that's what you mean when I said education is not information but formation. That's what Dr. Radhakrishnan also said when he said the education is aspiring knowledge beyond what is academic and beyond what is professional. Remember, I will explain to you the meaning of the word professional also in the course of my lecture. Because education is the enlightenment of the soul. That's what Dr. Radhakrishnan said. And enlightenment of the soul that dispels ignorance and illuminates the individual. That dispels, remember, ignorance and illuminates the soul. I am reminded of the words of Klaus Schwab of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Because our young minds who are engaged more with technology than human beings and who are the products of the digital world, they must have heard about Fourth Industrial Revolution. And Klaus Schwab, in one of the meetings of World Economic Forum at Davos, he said the difference between the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the earlier 3 revolutions was that the earlier 3 revolutions were product revolutions. But the Fourth Industrial Revolution is a system revolution, not a product revolution. And you have something called robot, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things. But Klaus Schwab said the limitation of all this is that a robot can replicate the brain of a human being, perhaps, but it cannot replicate the heart and soul of a human being. The heart, which is the storehouse of compassion and passion. The soul, which is full of creativity, it cannot be replicated. Therefore, he said, at the end of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, what we want is a new human renaissance. A new human renaissance. So that our youngsters do not feel digitally alienated. And in the context of the 21st century, when Dr. Radhakrishnan said education results in the enlightenment of the soul, if you look at it from the perspective of the Fourth Industrial Revolution, especially after the effect of now an endemic but formerly a pandemic called COVID, today you find that as far as online education is concerned, remember, one fundamental flaw with that online education is content and consumption are sometimes inadvertently taking place the process of learning. The young minds walk into the classroom, okay, they take advantage of the digital wherewithal, and they focus more on contents, they focus more on consumption. forgetting the basic fact that the objective of education is to awaken the curiosity of the young mind. And therefore, Klaus Schwab said what is required is a digital detox. And the role should be played by teachers. And he said in the post-COVID scenario, younger generation is constrained to feel that there is lack of meaning in life because of stress. Okay. And sometimes the younger generation is forced to take resort to contraindications. And therefore, Klaus Schwab says teachers have an onerous responsibility of maintaining the physical contacts in spite of social distancing. That's what it says. That means you must continue to communicate, okay, to the extent possible. You must maintain that connectivity so that the students do not feel that they are alienated. Because Klaus Schwab again says, in the name of connectivity, the most disconnected individuals are people who engage themselves with technology but not with human beings. And they suffer from what is called as digital alienation. And that alienation would result in frustration. And that frustration would sometimes result in aggression. And therefore, teachers have an onerous responsibility to walk that extra step, especially in these stressful days, and to make life more meaningful for our younger generation. That's perhaps what Dr. Radhakrishnan meant when he said that education is the enlightenment of the soul. Remember? And excellent statement made by Dr. Radhakrishnan is education inculcates in us tolerance. And you know how he had defined tolerance? He said, by tolerance, I mean it is the homage which the finite mind pays to the inexhaustibility of the infinite. Tolerance is, remember, what you pay or what the finite mind pays to the inexhaustibility of the infinite. That means the teacher should focus on inexhaustibility of the infinite. Therefore, in one of the books, Dr. Radhakrishnan says, a good teacher is one who never limits the unlimited imagination of his students because of his limited imagination. A good teacher is one who never imposes any limits on the unlimited imagination of the students because of his limited imagination. And likewise, he should not impose any limits on his unlimited imagination because of the limited imagination of the others. That means a teacher should have an open mind. Remembering very well that three things in life work out the best when they are open. A young student would be taught these elemental principles that a parachute works out the best when it is open. Then an umbrella works out the best when it is open. A book works out the best when it is open. A human mind also works out the best when it is open. And a teacher's mind should never be closed. It must be receptive to all the thoughts. I recall the words of Amartya Sen in this context. You know, Amartya Sen had made two observations on the role of teachers. After he got a Nobel Prize, he came back to Delhi School of Economics and pleasantries were exchanged that the Dean of School of Economics gave him a cup of coffee. And then Amartya Sen said, let's go and see the classrooms where I used to sit also. The Dean was reluctant. He was not, forthcoming to take Amartya Sen. Amartya could understand it. Then, why are you reluctant to take me? Then the Dean said, sir, examinations are taking place. Okay, but then I would like to see the question paper. Let me go. Amartya Sen said viciously. Amartya Sen has excellent sense of humor. And then the dean said, sir, what is there in the question paper? The same questions will be asked, repeated. Okay. Then Amartya Sen said, that's the point. Questions continue to remain the same, but answers would keep changing. Said. Questions would continue to remain the same, but answers would keep changing. And if a teacher doesn't have an open mind, then Amartya gave an example. Suppose a question was asked about the role of the state in 1970s. Everywhere students were going on strike in 1970s, demanding nationalization of everything. Okay, everything under the sun, we want to nationalize. Then we were college-going students. Remember, if a bus accident takes place, we would demand nationalize the buses. So, maximal role of the state was the order of the day in 1970s. But if the same question is asked in 21st century, you would debate whether the role of the state should be minimal or optimal. Okay. If it is minimal, what should be the judicious distance that should be maintained by the state? What are the various sectors where the state has an important role, like healthcare, education? Can the state totally withdraw itself? Therefore, this would happen only when the teacher's mind is open, he said. And the teacher must be the first person to understand one axiomatic truth in life. What is that? Today's knowledge is tomorrow's ignorance, he said. That one sentence is enough for us. Today's knowledge is tomorrow's ignorance. But if a teacher continues to bank on his past knowledge, remember what would happen? Are we not violating the sanctity of the classroom? The classroom, in my opinion, is more sacred than the altar of God. The most sanctified place under the sun is the classroom. And when a teacher walks into the classroom, there must be a metamorphosis in his personality totally. Remember. And that is the place you not only disseminate knowledge, no. That's the place where you create knowledge, remember. Let teachers understand the basic difference between teaching and research. Research is creation of knowledge. Teaching is dissemination of knowledge. And in my opinion, the best place for creation of knowledge is the classroom. The famous physicist from Princeton University, who was a Nobel laureate, John Archibald Wheeler, his name. He was interviewed by the media people after he got his Nobel Prize. Many questions were asked, and finally a mischievous question was asked by a journalist. Well, Mr. Wheeler, why do you think students exist in the universities? Why should you have students in the universities? You know what Archibald Wheeler said? Students are there to teach professors in the universities. Students are there to teach professors in the universities. And Amartya Sen says, even today, when I write a new manuscript, before I send the book for publication to any of the prestigious publishing houses, I circulate it among my students in the classroom. And after getting the reviews of the students and the remarks of the students, I have discussion with the students. And then I finalize the contents of the book. And that is the hallowed place called the classroom. And therefore, a teacher must have open mind and must never try to bank on his past. Here I will narrate to you a very interesting personal experience I had in my life. When I was in my late 20s, I went to Jawaharlal Nehru University campus to collect material for my research project. And at that time, one afternoon, a meeting was organized by a school. You have different schools in JNU. And that was a school of history. The purpose was they were felicitating a teacher who got an award equivalent to Nobel Prize, because Nobel Prize is there not in all subjects. In few subjects you have Nobel Prize. And he got an award which was equivalent to Nobel Prize, and that teacher was being felicitated. If my memory doesn't fail me, Sitaram Yechuri was the president of JNU at that time. Okay. And I entered the meeting hall just to relax. When I entered the meeting hall, I found a big banner. Half of it was covered, half of it was open. And the upper half was visible to my naked eye. And the banner said, "We don't want learned teachers." I was surprised at a function that was arranged to felicitate a teacher who got an award equivalent to Nobel Prize. The JNU organizers had the gumption to say, "We don't want learned teachers." But I know they have always a trick up their sleeve, which is beyond our comprehension. I waited patiently. The ritualistic items were going on. And when the teacher was about to be felicitated, he was asked to take a chair. And then they removed the lower half also. The entire banner read, I quote, "We don't want learned teachers. What we want is learning teachers." When somebody refers to you as a learned teacher, it means it's not a compliment to you. It says, "Oh, old man, you are fossilized. You are demonetized. And the new coins are driving you out of circulation." It becomes the fundamental law of economics. And therefore, you are learned. You are the thing of the past. Justice Krishna here was telling the same thing when he addressed students in Andhra University, that always judges are referred to as learned judges. Never take it as a compliment. A judge as well as a teacher should be ever learning and never learned. Only Krishna here can use those words. Should be ever learning, the touch of glow, and never learn, because you should never become fossilized. And that's what Amartya Sen was telling when he said you have an open mind. And then he said, "I will give you another example of the virtues of having an open mind." Amartya Sen is always fond of comparing China and India. And he always says, after the Bengal famine, you never had a famine in India, because famine is always man-made. Famine, drought, okay. And whereas in China, during the height of the Cultural Revolution, you had a famine, because people were afraid to convey the same to Mao. And he always makes a reference to that. One media person asked, "Sir, you always compare India and China and say India is great because it's a democracy. But how do you explain the fact that China is growing so fast at an exponential pace that today people say it is the economy number one in the world and the US is being relegated into the background? What is the secret of, and why India is not able to do that?" And you know what the answer he has given? Yes, China is an authoritarian setup. India is a democratic setup. And an authoritarian setup, in my opinion, is a closed society. A democratic society is an open society. But the basic difference between China and India is it is a closed society with an open mind. Indian society is an open society with a closed mind. And as long as our minds are closed, we can never compete with China, he said. And the genial seeds of the baptism of opening of the minds should take place in the classrooms. Remember, and that's where the role of a teacher is. And therefore, teachers should have three qualities. They must be lifelong learners. They must be frontline researchers and eternal problem solvers. My teacher taught me the first fundamental lesson of nobility of teaching. Some of the youngsters may look askance at me when I use this sentence. That sentence was, he said, Mr. Venkata Rao, you are commencing your innings as a teacher. And please remember one cardinal truth. Anyone has a right to complain, but not a teacher, he said. A teacher should not be of complaining type, but should be of complying type. Because a teacher should be always a part of the solution and never a part of the problem. And when you try to be a part of the solution, remember, you will be having that positive jive. Because you are dealing with youngsters in their most impressionistic age. And youngsters are like liquids. They don't have a shape of their own. They assume the shape of the container. And you are going to give that shape. And therefore, always try to be a part of the solution. That will make you a part, he said. And that will make you outstanding. To this day, I have not forgotten that point. And a teacher, a great teacher, always teaches not from the book, but from the heart. Please remember that. A teacher is one who travels beyond the text. And text is only a pretext for a teacher to make the beginning. Remember. And he must go beyond the text to the context. And he must have a holistic approach. Okay. Make healthy excursions with the centripetal and centrifugal forces drawing you not away from the focus without losing track of the focus. Because you must be in a position to sustain the interest of the students. And therefore, the job of a teacher, remember, is to sustain the interest. And at that stage, a teacher should remember academic excellence without human excellence is disastrous. In fact, one of the former Chief Justices of the United States, Earl Warren, he was asked a question, whom would you like to appoint as judges? You know what he said? A good human being who also knows law. He did not say an expert in law. I want to appoint a good human being who also knows law. As teachers, we are there to make good human beings. And as Einstein said, give me a good human being, I'll make him anything good. So academic excellence without human excellence is disastrous. When our fundamental duties, the 11 commandments in the Constitution say, to strive towards excellence in individual as well as collective sphere of activity so that the nation constantly rises in its endeavors to higher levels of achievement. What the Constitution ordains us to do is excellence does not mean excellence in the product alone. Excellence in the human being. Please remember that. And that excellence in the human being we can do when a teacher remembers the simple truth that a teacher is a role model for a student. And when I say teacher is a role model, he is just not a role model in the classroom for the 55 minutes alone, no. Okay. When a student watches you in the railway station, when a student watches you in the IMAX theater or any public space, he would look at you to see as to how you are your transactional analysis with other human beings each. And therefore, as they say, a teacher must remember another truth, that he cannot be an Alexander at work and a chimpanzee at home. Please remember that. You cannot be an Alexander at work and chimpanzee at home. You are that. In fact, the most difficult thing about teaching profession is you are under the constant gaze without anyone formally observing you. That's the whole problem. And therefore, I always tell my students, integrity is doing the right thing when nobody is observing. You cultivate that habit. Why should I maintain integrity when Professor VSL Murthy is observing me? That means I'm afraid of the Vice Chancellor called VSL Murthy. I'm not paying any respect to him otherwise. When I maintain integrity, remembering the fundamental definition of integrity given by Mahatma Gandhi, integrity is maintaining the coherence among three things: between what you think, what you say, and what you do. What you think, what you say, and what you do. If there is coherence among all these things, that is integrity. And that a teacher is supposed to maintain. And the last point I'd like to share, because Professor Vaisal Murthy gave me a caveat. It is 11 to 12. Okay. And the teacher should always remember, time mastery is the best example of self-mastery. Robin Sharma in his book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, says, the DNA of self-mastery is time mastery. It says that you have discipline. I'll explain to you only one incident which will make us more onerous. Most of you must have heard about K.R. Narayanan, the former president of India. And his teacher was Harold Lasky of London School of Economics. And people used to say, Harold Lasky was such a busy academician that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom used to wait for 6 months to have his interview, to have his appointment. Harold Lasky used to say, you kindly meet me then. That was the stature. And K.R. Narayanan went to London School of Economics for his advanced studies. And Lasky was his mentor. That means, as we do in your university, National Law School, IITs, the students were required to submit weekend assignments. And they are required to submit them to the mentors. And Harold Lasky was his mentor. And a busy person, for meeting whom the Prime Minister used to wait for 6 months, was required to evaluate the weekend assignments of a rookie student called K.R. Narayanan. Okay. And perhaps if I were in Lasky's position, I would have entrusted it to my research scholar, saying that please look into that. So some first year student has written something. But when Narayanan submitted his assignment, Narayanan became a foreign servant, IFS officer. And that's again history. He did not appear for civil services like we, the ordinary mortals, do. And he became a foreign servant because of his teacher called Lasky. I'll explain to you. When Narayanan submitted his weekend assignment to Lasky, Lasky could find time to evaluate that assignment. And after evaluating that assignment, he did not speak anything to Lasky. He took his letterhead and rightly wrote a letter to the Prime Minister of India, addressing it as, my dear Jawaharlal Nehru, the Honorable Prime Minister of India. Only a professor can do that. Nobody can do. And you know what he said? All these days I thought that you were shaping the destiny of a nation democracy liberated from the colonial yoke. And I thought that you were a statesman. But now I'm constrained to change my opinion. You may be wondering what is the reason. The reason is very simple. You are making a brilliant young man like K.R. Narayanan waste his time in London School of Economics. Make his time, waste his time There is nothing for him to learn from London School of Economics. The quality of assignment is so high that he has mastered everything. I leave it to your wisdom to make use of his services. Jawaharlal Nehru got that letter and immediately it did not consign into the dustbin or to the box file. He wrote, let Narayanan be drafted into foreign service. Immediately, his secretary came and objected. Sir, the civil service rules do not permit that. You must constitute a committee and the committee must examine and make its recommendation to you. Jawaharlal said, excellent. He constituted a committee. But the members of the committee were human beings. They were jealous that if they recommend Narayanan's name, he would overtake them. Therefore, they found all plausible excuses and came out with the recommendation that Narayanan is not fit enough to be drafted into this. The file came to Narayanan and Nehru. Nehru immediately said, the considered opinion of the committee is overruled. Let Narayanan be drafted into foreign service. Then the secretary came and said, what is this, sir? Nehru said, your job is to only to make a recommendation. The decision making is in my hands. If the decision making is in your hands, you could have decided. And K. Narayanan was drafted into foreign service. The rest is history. For the best presidents we had. But my point here is, if Narayanan's assignment was not seen by Lasky, and if Lasky were to hand it over to one of his lieutenants, we would have missed a golden jewel called Narayanan. It was the teacher who could identify him. Let us ask for ourselves one question. How many Narayanans are we missing by not we being diligent? If we can produce one Narayanan in 30 years of our academic career, we have done enough justice to our entitlements otherwise. So this is the job of a teacher. And please remember, in 21st century, trust, truthfulness, and transparency should permeate the qualities of literacy, not reading, writing, and arithmetic. The 3 R's are gone. 3 T's, trust, truth, and transparency. And first, it must begin at home. Home of whom? Home of the teachers. With these few words, I pay my homage to Dr. Radhakrishnan and my grateful thanks to VSLLS for having given such a wonderful opportunity to me to interact with you all. May the eternal lamp of learning illumine us all forever. The clock is 12 o'clock. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving such a beautiful message to all of us. I would like to request our Vice Chancellor to go ahead with the closing remarks, please.
Sir, it was an extraordinary account, sir, and you have taken us through many concepts, and right from biological mother to alma mater to what you call the Mother India, and also being a human being to being human, or human renaissance, or having an open mind. And in a way, sir, to quote Sarvepalli Radhakrishnan's own words, inexhaustibility of the infinite. So you have the richness of concepts you have deliberated upon, or you have taken us through, matches the inexhaustibility of the infinite, sir. And sir, we are so thrilled. Some of the teachers who are starting their careers in RV university are first-time teachers, having just taken their PhD from IITs, IIMs, and have joined as they're going to have their first year or first class as a teacher. So it's kind of an though to them as well as those who have taught for many years, it's like an extraordinary experience. And so thank you very much. We look forward to having you at our campus for a physical interaction and for to take a few questions from our faculty members. And we really look forward. So it's extraordinarily inspiring speech and the kind of things you have quoted. We are going to mull over them in the coming days, weeks, and months to really understand the true import of what you have said. And on behalf of all the teachers who are present here and the students who are present here, I want to profusely thank you. So had it been a physical face-to-face meeting, we would have stood up and given you a standing ovation. But now we have to do it in our heart of hearts and our minds, what is a comparable standing ovation. And thank you very much, sir. It's an extraordinary talk and extraordinary this thing. You have sown a lot of interesting ideas and inspired everyone in that process. And thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. With this, this program has ended, and thank you.
Thank you. We'll take your leave.
Thank you, everyone, for joining the call.